Or is this full-time MMA now?
I love full-time MMA right now.
Back to the daily grind, and shout out to the full-time patrons. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back bagel biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
Two of the UFC's top heavyweight contenders went back and forth on Twitter about a potential fight at UFC Moscow coming up later this year. Alexander Volkov challenged Derrick Lewis to a fight at UFC Moscow, and Derrick Lewis responded in typical Black Beast fashion. Hilarious. This is how the call out went from Alexander Volkov. It seems like the only way for me to get a fight at UFC Moscow is to call here to fight the Black Beast Derrick Lewis. What do you say? Derrick Lewis responded, "Black man in Moscow? Fuck that. Come to the UFC." Yo, Derrick Lewis is hilarious. But what's actually this would be a fight interesting for Derrick Lewis. Actually kind of fit Derrick Lewis. Before his most recent fight at UFC 226, he was actually fighting all around the world. I remember when he fought like Shamil Abdurkhamov, or I don't know his last name, so apologize for that. But when he fought Shamil, it was overseas. And I remember there was the idea being tossed around about potentially a camera crew following Black Beast around these, foreign countries. Wouldn't that be hilarious? I think that idea came from Ariel Helwani, but that's what I recall. That's why I was like, okay, Derrick Lewis might actually take this fight. But it looks like Moscow is off limits. He ain't fucking with that. And it's funny because Derrick Lewis is actually, usually wearing his Make America Great Again hat. I'm surprised he ain't down to go over to Moscow, you know what I'm saying? But it looks like that is one place Derrick Lewis isn't willing to go. But he is open to a fight with Alexander Volkov. And so that would be a cool fight, two of the top-ranked heavyweights in the world. I was wondering, though, what about Curtis Blaydes? And I say that because I saw that a fan actually mentioned that to Alexander Volkov on Twitter when he was calling out Derrick Lewis. They're like, Derrick Lewis has a hurt back, he might not be able to fight. How about Curtis Blaydes? And that's an interesting little, caveat, because Curtis Blaydes is actually potentially the future heavyweight champion. I mean, he's only 27 years old with super solid wrestling in the heavyweight division, and he's also got some power. We just saw him cut open Alistair Overeem in that third round with them Curtis Razor blades, with them elbows, So Curtis Blaydes is very dangerous, but also a very strong wrestler. And as is the case a lot of the times, that's a high-risk, low-reward fight as of right now. Until Curtis Blaydes, his name becomes bigger, that's a very high risk. He could really beat any of these guys in the heavyweight division, including Daniel Cormier. Now, I don't know if that plays into why, Alexander Volkov didn't necessarily mention him in the call-out, but it probably is because Derrick Lewis is a bigger name. So he's actually, if you're talking about Derrick Lewis, a lower risk and a higher reward than Curtis Blaydes. And, that's kind of the name of the game when you're trying to get to the top. So maybe we do see this fight. And one other thing about Alexander Volkov versus Curtis Blaydes is they're both kind of the up-and-coming prospects of the heavyweight division, even though they're both already in the top 5. So I don't know if prospects is the right word, but they still are up-and-comers. They're both very young in their game. I believe Volkov's only like 29 years old with like 35 fights or something crazy. So he's got a bright future in the heavyweight division. He just came coming off of a finish win over Fabricio Verdun. Then you got Curtis Blaydes. I think he's only like 27-year-olds coming off of a win over Mark Hunt and Alistair Overeem. So both of these guys have a serious future in the UFC heavyweight division. So maybe the UFC doesn't really want to book Volkov versus Blaydes right now, not kill a prospect, kind of like Adesanya versus Costa. Maybe wait 1 or 2 fights down the line. Who knows? We'll see. But it does look like Alexander Volkov is looking to fight at UFC Moscow. Alexander Volkov, Russian heavyweight. I'm sure he would have the home crowd on his side. So, but who will his opponent be? We don't know. It might be Black Beast. I would like to see Derrick Lewis going over to Russia, not gonna lie, just, on a selfish tip. But it looks like he's not really down with that idea. So it is what it is. But who even knows if Derrick Lewis is going to be healthy, right, coming into the fight? I mean, we don't know what's going on with this guy's back. When he fought Francis Ngannou, we thought the back was going to be okay going into the fight. If you listen to his interviews, he was talking about the magnesium shot he got that I believe lasts like a week. So we thought he'd be good going into the fight. But then after the first round, I believe in his Francis Ngannou fight, that's when his back locked up, and so we had a little bit of a lackluster performance. But it is what it is. People aren't really the biggest fan of Derrick Lewis because of only what he does in the octagon, which is also entertaining sometimes. But what he does outside the octagon, Derrick Lewis is a fan favorite because he's got some of the best social media in the UFC. And then on top of that, his interviews are fucking to die for. Pause. So with that being said, can't wait for Derrick Lewis's next fight. If it's against Volkov, I'm going to be watching. Whoever it's against, I'm probably going to be watching. But also, if you didn't know who Alexander Volkov was, definitely keep your eye on him, man. He just finished Fabricio Verdun, and he's in the top 5 of the heavyweight division, but he's not the biggest name yet. But with that being said, he could likely be fighting at Moscow. I'll keep you updated as to who his opponent will be, especially if he gets announced to face Derrick Lewis in Moscow, because I think that would be a pretty fun fight. So with that being said, it is what it is. Let the full-time family know what you think in the comments.
Da 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 da. It's the motherfucking DOG.